morning and welcome once again to Meet the Church. We hope that you continue to enjoy this little feature we put together each week when you get to find out a little bit more about somebody who comes along to Dale Street. This morning, answering the 10 questions we put together is James Moran. So your opportunity to find out a little bit more about James. Over to you, Mr. Moran.
So I'm James Moran, born 17th of February 1988. I was born in St James's Hospital in Leeds, where I lived in Leeds for the first year of my life before being moved over to good old Barnsley, where I grew up with my two siblings. I have a younger sister, Hannah Chandler, and an older sister, Naomi Butterfield, which a lot of you will know. My parents are Mandy Batt and my dad, Keith Moran. I grew up, like I said, in Barnsley. Family life as a youngster, can't really complain. I had a really good upbringing. Great parents, both worked very hard to provide for us. We had lots of lovely things, lots of nice holidays. That's one thing Mum and Dad always liked to do every year, was to take us on a family holiday, often with Grandma and Grandad. So really good memories of that growing up, really. Going away every year with some of the craziest grandparents you could probably imagine. So we had some really good times there. I had a really good upbringing, as I said. I got along with my sisters fairly well. I think it was usually my task to try and annoy them, but really we were quite a close family. I've got lots of cousins, lots of uncles and aunties, come from a really big family, and we were really close growing up. So yeah, family life as a youngster was really good. Some really happy memories. So my earliest memories of going to church, I was brought up from being a baby going to church. So my earliest memory is pretty young, probably around the age of about 5 years old. Just remember really being, Mum and Dad used to make me go in like waistcoat and tie to church on a Sunday morning. And I had one of those ties, like elasticated ties. I just remember Mum dragging me down the central aisle of church, dragging me out by my earlobes or by my elasticated tie. She used to give it a bit of a twang just to warn me, and then if I didn't correct my behaviour, I'd be dragged out by my ears, which is probably one of the reasons why they're so pronounced. But that's my earliest memory of church. Went to a church in Hemsworth, a gospel hall. Mixed feelings about my memories about there. Had some really good times, some not so good times, but really grateful that we spent a lot of years there. The teaching was absolutely great for a youngster. The Sunday schools I remember being really enjoyable. Big John Butty conducting from the front, all the songs and choruses we used to sing, and our little Sunday school groups that we got split off into. The teachers we had were really good. I'm really thankful for that part of my life. At the age of 10 years old, I'm probably a lot before that actually, probably from being about 6, 7 year old, all I ever wanted to be was a doctor. Some of you might be quite surprised at that, but yeah, from being a youngster really, I had a real desire to just become a doctor, right up until probably the age of 15 or 16, when I realised that it wasn't going to happen, but that's what I always wanted to be. James Moran as a teenager, bit of a mixed bag. I would say that my hardest time for my parents was when I was a toddler. I remember being a bit of a terror, and I'm constantly reminded by my parents of that. But as a teenager, I was fairly trouble-free, a little bit lazy, very messy. Lots of memories about being told off for the state in my bedroom, but fairly happy, standard teenage boy, really into sports and football. Spent most nights out with my mates just playing. Didn't really cause too many problems for my parents. One or two moments that spring to mind, but on the whole, I think I was a fairly average teenager, fairly respectful. Respected my parents most of the time, I guess. Yeah, fairly easy going. Yeah, so I didn't become a doctor. I guess I probably had all the potential at school to do it. I was fairly intelligent as a kid, usually in top of the class in most subjects. But when I got to college age, I just a period of my life where I wasn't really focused on study academically. And once I'd started, working part time on a few jobs and getting used to earning a bit of money, studying just went out the window. I've had a few different jobs, and I jumped between jobs for a while, up until the point where I had to take a year out of work when I had my treatment for when I had chemotherapy, which gave me a bit of a chance to reevaluate things, I guess. And after my treatment, I applied for a job with the local council. My mother-in-law worked for the council and heard of a job that had come up in the licensing department and recommended that I applied for it. Didn't think I'd get it. Wasn't really qualified for the job, but I applied for it and I got the job. So I've been doing that for 8 years now. I work in the licensing department, which we deal with all sorts really, regulating alcohol, gambling and entertainment, taxes, scrap metal, things like that. Really boring stuff. But yeah, 8 years I've been doing that now, and I would say I enjoy my job. There's a wage. So I first met Caroline when I was about 16 years old at a youth conference at Dale Evangelical Church, which I'd gone along to with a couple of friends. I say it was the first time we met. I noticed Caroline, I'm not so sure that she noticed me. And for me, it was love at first sight, I guess. And I chased her for a number of years, unsuccessfully. Got stood up on a couple of occasions, got close to a date. One occasion we got to the actual evening of a date where I got ready and was just about to jump into the car to drive over and pick her up, and I got a text, let me down. But then in 2009 I was playing football for DSEC Logos, and she just happened to be there watching. She was friends with somebody whose husband played for the opposition team, and afterwards we just got chatting as you do through Facebook, and got invited round for coffee, went out on a couple of dates, and yeah, she realised what she'd been missing for 5 years, I guess, and the rest is history. Do I have a favourite child? I guess I would be expected to say no, but if I'm honest, then I do have a favourite, and I would have to say that my favourite is in terms of hobbies, I guess, yeah, as you know, when you've got young children, you don't have much time for yourself, and we've had a long period of time where we've had a baby in the house at any given time for some time, but now the kids are all getting a little bit older, and there's a little bit more time to do things for ourselves. Hobby-wise, I like playing football, and recently I've been building up a nice collection of golf clubs, so I'm hoping to get back into golf. I used to play a lot of golf when I was younger, so that's the target for the next couple of years, to get out on the golf course. So as I said, I was brought up going to church and to Yorkshire Christian Camp from being a baby, going to church week in, week out, hearing the messages, hearing the stories, and I guess I always had an understanding of what it meant to be a Christian from a very young age. But the point at which I actually did anything about it, I was 13 years old, and I'd been to church at Hemsworth. There was a gentleman called Colin Hutchinson speaking, and yeah, I sat in that service, and I got home and I was sat in my bed that night, and I just knew that there was a lot of stuff in my life that needed dealing with. I didn't want to leave it any longer, so I sat down on my bed and I prayed and I asked the Lord Jesus into my life. And I then suddenly felt really scared to tell my parents or anybody. I didn't know what to do, so I sent a text message to my parents to tell them. And then, obviously my parents were absolutely over the moon. And I've never looked back since then. So 13 years old, I'm now 32, so that's nearly 20 years now that I've been a Christian. I guess my faith has helped me in a number of ways outside of church. Many different occasions throughout my life where I think back and without God in my life, I wouldn't be where I am today. There's a number of things I could recall. Probably the most prominent time was when Caroline had the twins. Really difficult birth. After giving birth to Elspeth, Caroline had a massive hemorrhage, and they wheeled her out of the room, and I thought that'd be the last time I'd see her. She was really quite poorly for some time, and I think it was one of those times in my life that it was a time that's totally out of my control, and I felt totally helpless as a husband, as a father, stuck in the hospital, not being able to look after the kids, Caroline in intensive care, and me not being able to do anything to help her. And it was a moment in my life where my whole life was in God's hands, and all I had to fall back on was my faith. And it was a moment where I realised how weak we are as human beings, and how dependent we are on God. And it's a shame that it takes moments like that to remember that we're in God's hands. But I'm obviously really thankful that we are, and thankful that through God's grace that we are where we are today. My favourite go-to verse, unsurprisingly for many that know me, often quite a standard one for some people, but a really important verse for me, Jeremiah 23:11, which says, "I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." That verse, for many different reasons, for me is just a verse that brings me a lot of warmth. There's been times in my life where that verse has been a verse that's been relayed to me by friends, by family, at times of struggle. And it's a verse for me that really not says that in every situation things are going to be all right, but to know that in every situation that God is there and that He has a plan for us, and that no matter what happens, God's got it in control, and His ultimate plan for us is to prosper us.